The ship slid from the nothingness of faster-than-light travel into the cold, silent dark of normal space. The transition was smooth, a mere flicker of the lights on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Odyssey. Captain Tay leaned back in his command chair, rubbing his eyes. The long shifts were getting to him. Drop successful. Science Officer Yuna reported from her station, her voice calm and even. Running standard post-warp diagnostics. The new drive still feels loose? Loose? Tay asked, not opening his eyes. Aesthetic impression, Captain. Data is nominal. For now. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, pulling up star charts. Though our position is off. By a lot. That got his attention. Tay sat up, his chair creaking softly. The main view screen showed the familiar peppering of stars, but the dense nebula they were supposed to be skirting was nowhere in sight. In its place was an emptiness, a patch of black so deep it seemed to swallow the light around it. And in front of that black, glittering like scattered jewels against velvet, were hundreds of tiny, sharp points of light. Magnify, Tay said, his voice low.yuna complied. The image zoomed. The points of light resolved into shapes. Sleek, angular vessels the size of mountains, arranged in perfect, regimented lines. Some were sharp as daggers, others broad and heavy like floating fortresses. Energy shields shimmered around them in faint, kaleidoscopic hues. Along their hulls, ports glowed with a soft, menacing light weapon ports, Tay realized. This was not a random collection of ships. This was a fleet, and they were sitting right in the middle of its parade ground. On the flagship of the 3rd Imperial Patrol Fleet, the Light of Vorin, Commander Kale was enjoying a moment of pride. The formation was flawless. The energy signatures were optimal. The Emperor would be pleased with the readiness display. His 4 sensory stalks, arranged in a crown around his head, twitched in satisfaction as data streams flowed directly into his mind. The alert was so sudden, and so severe it was physically painful. A shriek of raw information pierced his consciousness. Unscheduled transition. Unknown vessel. Center of fleet array. On his command pedestal, holograms exploded to life, showing a small, oddly bulbous ship of dull gray metal. It had no visible weapon mounts, no shield projectors, no proud insignia. It looked primitive, and it had just appeared, without any warp signature, right in the heart of his formation. It was an act of unimaginable boldness or stupidity. Battle stations. Kale's voice, a deep gurgle, echoed through the ship's neural network. All vessels, power weapons, and target the intruder. Do not fire unless fired upon. I want identification now. Across the fleet, a silent wave of activation rippled. Glowing weapon ports brightened. Targeting lasers, invisible to the human eye, painted the Odyssey from 100 different directions. Energy shields hummed to a higher intensity. The peaceful review transformed into a sphere of lethal force in seconds. On the bridge of the Odyssey, a soft chime sounded. We're being painted by multiple targeting systems, Yuna reported, her tone that of someone noting a change in the weather. Electromagnetic and gravimetric scans are hitting us pretty hard. Also, there's a massive energy buildup from the, let's call them the really big ones over there. Tay nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen. The alien ships were beautiful, in a terrifying way. Any communication? A tight beam transmission on a broad spectrum. Standard first contact package, I think. Aggressive posturing, demand for identification, a lot of royal we language. The AI is decoding the language now. It's complex, but the sentiment is simple. Who are you, and why should we not destroy you? Send the standard automated response, Tay said. The one for accidental territorial incursion. Polite, informative, non-threatening. Sending. On the Light of Vorin, The communication officer, a slender Talasi with skin like polished stone, jerked in surprise. "Commander." A response. "Already?" "Put it through." A flat, pleasant synthetic voice filled the command chamber, speaking in perfectly accented High Vorin. "Greetings. This is the human exploration vessel Odyssey. We are experiencing a navigational systems malfunction. We mean no hostility. Please stand by for resolution." "Thank you." Silence followed. Kale's sensory stalk stiffened. No identification of origin. No submission to imperial authority. No acknowledgement of the threat surrounding them. No reaction to the fleet's display of power. Just a statement of technical difficulty and a request to wait. They told us to stand by? The tactical officer hissed. "Scan them again." Kale ordered. Everything. Life signs, power core, weapon emissions. The results poured in. The ship was powered by a contained fusion reaction, simple but efficient. Its hull composition was a mundane titanium alloy. Its internal atmosphere was nitrogen-oxygen, corrosive and primitive. And the life signs? There were 7 warm-blooded bipeds aboard. Their vital signs showed elevated heart rates and cortisol-level signs of stress. Yes, but not of terror. Not of the soul-crushing fear that should grip any being finding itself in the center of the imperial fist. Their power levels are constant. No weapon systems charging. No shields raising. The tactical officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. They are just sitting there. "Open a visual channel," Kale said. "I will speak to them directly." On the Odyssey, Yuna looked at Tay. Incoming visual communication request. High bandwidth. Tay straightened his shirt. "Put it on screen. And for goodness sake, keep the Panda video ready, but don't send it unless I say so." The main viewer shifted. The stunning, terrifying vista of the Imperial fleet was replaced by the image of Commander Kale, his leathery gray skin, his 4 dark, unblinking eyes, his sharp, bony features were displayed in impeccable detail. He stood on a command pedestal, the glow of holographic controls reflecting off his uniform. The background was a cathedral of technology and shadow. "I am Commander Kale of the 3rd Imperial Patrol Fleet of the Voring Galactic Empire," he intoned, his voice dripping with authority and menace. "You have violated sovereign space. You will identify your species and your world of origin. You will lower any defenses and prepare for boarding and inspection. Your compliance will determine your fate." Tay listened, waited a beat for the translation to settle in his ear, then offered a small, polite smile. "Hello, Commander. As our message said, I'm Captain Tay of the Odyssey. We seem to have taken a wrong turn. Our faster-than-light drive is experimental. It malfunctioned. We're working on the problem. We apologize for the interruption." Kale stared. The human's demeanor was wrong. He was not prostrating himself. He was not demanding to speak to someone of higher rank. He was apologizing as if he had spilled a drink at a social gathering. Not materialized in the middle of the most powerful military force in the sector. "Your apology is noted," Kale said slowly, emphasizing each word. "You are surrounded by the weapons of the Empire. You will comply immediately." "Understood," Tay said, nodding. "We are complying with standing by. Our engineer Min is working on the drive calculations. It shouldn't be too long. In the meantime, we are happy to exchange basic cultural and astronomical data if you wish. It might help avoid future misunderstandings." On the light of Vorin, the command crew exchanged glances of utter bewilderment. The human was offering a data exchange, while targeted by enough firepower to vaporize a small moon. Kale felt the first trickle of something cold and unfamiliar in his gut. It wasn't fear of the human's technology, which seemed mediocre. It was confusion at their psychology. They were not reacting at all. "Stand by," Cale finally said, his voice tight, and cut the transmission. The screen on the Odyssey returned to the view of the silent, waiting fleet. "Well," Tay said, leaning back again. They seemed serious about their personal space. Yuna allowed herself a small smile. "Their formation is very precise. I'm getting excellent sensor readings on their shield harmonics. This is a fantastic accident. Let's just hope Min can get us home before they stop being polite," Tay said, but his voice was calm. He picked up a tablet and began reviewing the engine diagnostics. Outside the viewport, the immense, deadly fleet held its position, waiting for a reaction that never came. The silence on the bridge of the Light of Voron was heavy and cold. Commander Cale's sensory stalks remained rigid, processing the impossible situation. The human ship, the Odyssey, just hung there. Its engines were at minimal power. Its odd, rounded shape looked terribly vulnerable against the sharp, martial lines of his fleet. And yet, the humans had spoken to him as if he were a traffic controller, not the master of an Imperial battle group. "They are." "Calm," his tactical officer said, the disbelief clear in his voice. "Biometrics still show no panic." "It is unnatural." "It is a trick," Cale replied, but he felt less sure. "Or a profound ignorance. Either way, we must establish control. The protocol is clear. We demonstrate the consequence of defiance." He gave the order. Across the fleet, 3 of his heaviest battle cruisers, the Voron's Fury, the Star Lance, and the Implacable detached from their formation. They moved with silent, menacing grace. Their massive engines glowed with contained power. They positioned themselves around the human vessel in a perfect triangle. At this range, their weapons could not miss. On the command, 100 weapon ports on each cruiser flared with a deep, resonant blue light. Targeting lasers, now visible in the charged space dust, crisscrossed the Odyssey's hull, painting it with dots of intense light. A low hum, a subsonic vibration meant to unsettle and intimidate, began to pulse through space, transmitted directly through the human ship's hull. It was the standard Voron show of force. It had caused hardened warlords to surrender without a shot. It made species weep and beg for mercy. On the bridge of the Odyssey, the lights dimmed slightly as the power draw from the alien targeting systems interfered with the external sensors. "Okay, that's a bit annoying," Yuna said, frowning at her console. "Their targeting beams are causing localized heating on the outer hull. Nothing serious, but it's scrambling my long-range scans of that interesting nebula at the edge of the sector." Captain Tay glanced at the main viewer, which now showed the terrifying sight of 3 mountain-sized warships, their weapons glowing, pointed directly at them. The subsonic hum made the deck plates vibrate faintly. "Can you filter it out?" Tay asked. "Trying," Yuna replied. "But it's a broad-spectrum interference. Min might be having trouble with the fine calibration on the starboard sensor array because of it." Tay sighed. "It was always something." "All right. Move us. Gently. Take us about 50 kilometers starboard, away from the biggest one. Let's see if the interference is less over there." "Aye, Captain." The Odyssey's maneuvering thrusters fired. They were small, precise puffs of gas. The ship began to turn, slowly and casually, as if changing lanes in slow traffic. It then moved forward, sliding smoothly between the looming forms of the Star Lance and the Implacable. It came to a stop in a slightly clearer patch of space, the original 3 cruisers now slightly off its port side. On the Light of Voron, the tactical officer made a choked sound. "Commander, the intruder vessel. It has moved." "I see it." "Were they attempting to flee?" "No, sir. Their course was not away. It was lateral. They repositioned themselves between the lance and the implacable. Their speed was minimal. It was a station-keeping maneuver. Kale felt the cold feeling in his gut grow. They hadn't tried to run. They hadn't returned the threat. They had simply moved to a better spot. They had treated his warships like inconvenient furniture. "This has gone on long enough," a new voice said. Stepping onto the command pedestal was Rena, the Imperial diplomat attached to the fleet. Her Talasi skin was smooth and pale, her eyes large and intelligent. They are either impossibly powerful or impossibly naive. We must communicate, not just posture. They understand posturing, Kale argued. They choose to ignore it. Then we must make them understand the reality, Rena said. Give me a direct channel, audio and visual. On the Odyssey, another chime sounded. Another hail, Una said. Different sender ID. Looks official. Put it through. Tay said that the image of Commander Kale was replaced by that of Rena. She was striking, with an elegant, hairless head and fine robes that shimmered with subtle light. She held herself with the perfect, still posture of a lifelong diplomat. Unknown vessel. I am Rena, voice of the Empire for the Vergay sector. You are in violation of Imperial Code 7. Your continued non-compliance is an act of aggression. You will now provide the following: your species designation, your homeworld coordinates, the technology behind your silent translation, and your unsignatured warp transition. You will do so immediately. She paused, letting the weight of the demands hang in the air. Her large eyes were unblinking, designed to convey unshakable authority. Tay listened, nodded. He leaned slightly towards the comms pickup. Voice Rena, thank you for reaching out. As I told Commander Kale, I am Captain Tay. We are humans. Our homeworld is Earth. Our translation software is standard on our vessels. I can send you the basic linguistic algorithms if you like. As for the drive, it's an experimental human design. It malfunctioned. We're fixing it. Our astrophysicist, Laya, is working on the coordinate calculations for our return trip. We have no hostile intent. Rena's composed expression did not change, but a faint twitch at the corner of her eye betrayed her profound shock. He had just given the information, freely, no bargaining, no demands of his own. He had offered linguistic algorithms, and he had said, thank you for reaching out. Your Earth is not in our records, she stated, her voice carefully controlled. Define human. Define your governmental structure. Who is your emperor? Tay considered this. Humans are bipedal, omnivorous, from a terrestrial planet. As for government, it's a bit complicated. We have many nations. No single emperor. A collection of representative councils, mostly. We're on a scientific mission, not a political one. Rena was silent for a long moment. Many nations? No emperor? Scientific mission? It was the profile of a primitive, fractured species. And yet, they were here, in the heart of the Empire, utterly unimpressed. You do not seem to understand your position, Rena said, her tone softening into one of warning. You are detained. You will be boarded. Your vessel will be inspected. This is not a request. We understand, Tay said, his voice still frustratingly even. We're just waiting for our engineer to finish his diagnostic. Once we're mobile, we'll be on our way and out of your space. We don't require boarding or inspection, but we appreciate the offer of assistance. The channel closed from the Imperial side. Rena turned to Kale. Her usual diplomatic calm finally cracked. They are not naive, she whispered. They are. They are indifferent. They acknowledge our words, but they do not accept our reality. It is like speaking to a force of nature. You tell a storm it is under arrest. Kale stared at the image of the bland, gray human ship. It had stopped moving again. It just sat there, between two of his cruisers, as if it had always been there. The glow from his ship's weapons reflected dully off its hull. "Indifference is a luxury," Kale said, his voice a low growl. "One we will correct. Prepare the tractor beam, and ready the boarding teams. We will show them what reality is." He wanted, more than anything, to see a reaction. A flinch, a sign of fear. Anything. On the Odyssey, Una looked up from her scans. "They're powering up a new system. A concentrated gravimetric projector. Probably a tractor beam." Tay said, looking at the engine status report Min had just sent. "If they lock on, it might jostle the repair bots Min has outside on the drive housing. Tell him to secure them if he can. I'd hate to lose one. They're a pain to calibrate." "Aye, Captain." Tay looked back at the viewer, at the magnificent, deadly fleet that surrounded them. He felt a professional admiration for their technology, but no fear. The universe was big, and today it was just being a little inconvenient. Diplomat Rena stood in the communication suite of the Light of Vorin, her mind racing. The human's indifference was a wall she had never encountered. All beings in the galaxy understood power. They understood hierarchy. They reacted to the symbols of the Empire. This was like arguing with a rock. A polite, informative rock. "We must shift tactics," she said to Commander Kale, who observed from the command pedestal, his stalks tense with frustration. "They respond to logic, but not to threat. We must appeal to their reason through protocol. We must show them the majesty they are ignoring. Once they see it, truly see it, their perspective will change. They will understand their place." Kale gave a low gurgle of agreement. "Do it. Make them see." On the bridge of the Odyssey, the crew was going about their business. Engineer Min was in a maintenance shaft, muttering to himself as he rerouted power to the experimental drive stabilizers. Crewman Jay was in the small mess hall, making a pot of strong coffee. Science Officer Una was cataloging the fascinating shield harmonics of the alien vessels. Captain Tay was reviewing a report on hydroponic lettuce yields from the ship's garden. The imposing fleet outside the viewports had become a background detail, a strange but temporary part of the scenery. A new alert chimed, different from the others. It was a high-bandwidth, multi-layered signal. "Incoming transmission," Una reported. "Heavy cultural data packets embedded. Visual and auditory primacy. It's a ceremony, I think." "Put it on the main screen," Tay said, setting his tablet aside. The viewer shifted. The starfield and the menacing warships were replaced by a breathtaking, slowly rotating holographic emblem. It was complex, an interweaving of sharp geometric shapes and flowing energy patterns that pulsed with a soft, golden light. A deep, resonant voice, speaking in the same translated High Vorin, began to speak. It was not Rena's voice. It was richer, more powerful, filled with an age-old authority. "Behold the imperial seal," the voice intoned. "Symbol of the eternal dynasty, of Vorin supremacy across 10,000 stars. Of order and power everlasting." The image shifted to show a massive figure seated on a throne that seemed carved from a single black crystal. The Emperor. He was shrouded in subtle holographic effects, making him seem both vast and distant. The voice continued, listing titles that seemed to go on forever. Sovereign of the core systems. Protector of the Vergae. Scourge of the Nebula Pirates. High Arbiter of the Galactic Concord. All who travel the star lanes do so by the grace of the Empire. All who communicate, trade, or make war do so within the laws set forth by the throne. To stand before this symbol is to stand before the will of the galaxy itself. You will now acknowledge this authority. You will state your allegiance and your purpose. and you will submit to Imperial judgment. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial seal hanging in the air on the screen for a moment before it faded. On the Odyssey, there was a short silence. "Wow," said Crewman J, who had wandered onto the bridge with 2 coffee mugs. He handed one to Yuna. That was some serious graphic design. The rendering on that hologram was incredible. No latency at all. The audio was layered with subharmonics meant to induce awe or fear, Yuna noted clinically, taking the coffee. Fascinating use of psychoacoustics. I wonder if it works on all the species in their empire. Tay nodded slowly. It was very formal. Very official. They clearly want a formal response. He thought for a moment. We are visitors, accidentally. We should respond in kind. Something culturally neutral, but friendly. Yuna, do we have that first contact media package? The one with the peaceful imagery? The one with the panda? Yuna asked, a small smile on her lips. That's the one. The panda is universally non-threatening. Send it. Along with a text greeting in their language. Polite, simple. On it. In the Imperial Communication Suite, Rena waited. She felt a sense of certainty. The ceremony was ancient, its effects psychological and profound. To see the Emperor, even in recording, was to feel the weight of history and power. The humans would now understand. They would be shaken. They would respond with proper deference, or at least with a fearful silence. The alert came. A response. She opened it eagerly. The Imperial seal was replaced on her screen by the image of a fluffy, black and white terrestrial creature sitting in green bamboo, chewing on a stalk. It looked up, its eyes dark and gentle. Soft, pleasant music played a simple melody of flutes and strings. Text scrolled across the bottom of the screen in clean, efficient High-Voran script. Greetings from Earth. We come in peace. We are temporarily lost. Thank you for your patience. The panda waved a paw. Rena stared. Commander Kale, who had been watching over her shoulder, made a sound like a malfunctioning pump. Is that a beast? He finally managed. It is. It is a deliberate insult, Rena whispered, but her certainty was crumbling. The response was so utterly mismatched. It was not defiance. It was not fear. It was like a child offering a drawing to a judge. They mock us. Or, Kale said, the cold realization dawning, they truly do not understand. They see the symbols, but the meaning does not reach them. It is not rejection. It is incomprehension. On the human ship, the crew had moved on. The panda video was sent. It was a nice panda. Jay went back to check on the coffee supply. Min reported that the drive stabilizers were realigning, but it would take another hour. Tay picked up his tablet again. Yuna, while we have a moment, can you compile the sensor data on their engine signatures? The way those big ships move with such low energy expenditure is remarkable. Our propulsion theory group would love to see that. Already compiling, Captain. Their efficiency is off the charts. It's all in the gravitational manipulation. They spoke of the Empire's technology as engineers admiring a well-made tool. There was no talk of emperors, of thrones, of submission. The grand display of galactic majesty had been processed, acknowledged as serious graphic design, and filed away. Back on the flagship, the mood had shifted from anger to a deep, unsettling anxiety. Imperial intelligence had completed its frantic search. Commander Diplomat. We have searched all archives, all historical records, all rumor logs from the Rim. There is no Earth, no human species. Not even a myth that matches their description. Rena turned from the screen. The image of the waving panda burned into her mind. Then they are not from within the Empire. Not from any known rival power. They are from outside, Kale finished, the words heavy with implication. from beyond the mapped galaxy. That changed everything. A new species with unknown technology, unknown psychology, appearing not at the borders with a fleet, but alone, in the very center of imperial power. And their first, only reaction to that power was a polite, bland disregard. What kind of beings came from such a place? What gave them such impossible confidence? The fear was no longer that the humans were mocking them. The fear was that the humans did not have a frame of reference in which the Empire was impressive enough to mock. They were so far outside imperial understanding that the Empire itself was just scenery. The protocol for unknown extra-imperial entities is clear, Rena said, her voice hollow. Detain, assess, contain. Cale nodded, his earlier frustration hardening into a grim resolve. The time for communication was over. The humans, in their terrifying indifference, had left him no choice. He had to provoke a reaction, to see what they would do when forced. Activate the tractor beam, he ordered, his voice firm. And prepare the boarding teams. We will bring them in. We will see what they are, once they are here. He needed to see them react. He needed to see anything other than that calm, infuriating politeness. The order was given. On the light of Vorin, the tactical officer engaged the gravimetric projector. A beam of focused gravity, invisible to the naked eye, shot out from the belly of the great warship. It was designed to grip a vessel's hull and hold it as firmly as a hand around a child's toy. On the Odyssey, the effect was immediate. The ship shuddered, a deep metallic groan echoing through its frame. The lights on the bridge flickered. On the main viewer, the stars seemed to stretch and distort for a second as the artificial gravity field interacted with their own. Engineer Min's voice came over the com, annoyed and slightly muffled. Hey, what was that? I just had a repair bot aligning the tertiary plasma conduit. It's off by 3 microns now. I'll have to restart the sequence. Captain Tay steadied himself on his chair. Report, Una. A high-power tractor beam. They've locked onto us. It's a strong pull. Our inertial dampeners are compensating, but it's putting a strain on the external fittings. Tay nodded. Understood. Min, secure your bots if you can. We seem to be getting towed. Towed? By who? Min asked. The locals. They're being insistent. On the Imperial flagship, the crew watched their sensors. The human vessel was resisting the pull, its engines still at minimal power, but it was not fighting. It was simply holding its position, forcing the tractor beam to work at maximum, just to keep its grip. It was like trying to drag a boulder by a rope. Increase power to the projector, Cale ordered, feeling a flush of irritation. He wanted the human ship to lurch, to be pulled off balance. He wanted a sign of struggle. The beam intensified. The Odyssey groaned again, and this time it began to move slowly, dragged towards the belly of the light of Vorin. They're pulling us, Min confirmed over the com. His voice resigned. Let them, Tay said calmly. Might save on fuel for station keeping. Just keep working on the drive. The sooner it's fixed, the sooner we can leave these friendly people alone. Una monitored the strain. Hull stress is within tolerance. But if they increase power again, we might get some microfractures on the older welds. Notify me if it gets critical. For the Empire, it was a tense, slow process. The human ship came without fighting, but also without cooperating. It was a dead weight. It felt less like a capture and more like collecting space debris. Now, Cale said, his eyes fixed on the screen. Launch the boarding pods. Standard protocol. Breach at the main airlocks. Secure the bridge. Detain the crew. From the flanks of the surrounding cruisers, a dozen small armored pods shot forth. They were shaped like sharp teeth, moving with swift, precise bursts of thrust. They slammed into the Odyssey's hull with loud, magnetic clangs, latching on around the ship's 3 main airlocks. Inside each pod, a team of 4 Vorin Marines, clad in powered combat armor and armed with energy rifles and stun fields, prepared for violent entry. On the Odyssey, the sound of the impacts echoed through the corridors. "They're knocking," Jay said from his station. Looking up from a systems check, multiple hull attachments at airlocks 1, 2, and 4, Una confirmed. "They're attempting to cut through." Tay's expression became serious, but not fearful. It was the look of a man dealing with a persistent nuisance. "Authorized non-lethal defense protocol Gamma. Keep our people safe. Do not escalate. Acknowledged. Activating Gamma." Protocol Gamma was not a weapon. It was a safety measure designed for dealing with hull breaches or contaminated docking attempts. As the Vorin Marines activated their plasma cutters and began to burn through the outer airlock doors, the Odyssey's computer identified the precise location of each intrusion dot at each of the 3 airlocks. A localized electromagnetic pulse, contained tightly to the outer hull, discharged. It was a powerful, short burst of energy dot inside the boarding pods and clamped to the hull. The effect was instantaneous. The Marine suits went dead. HUD displays flickered and died. Servos in the powered armor locked up. Plasma cutters sputtered out. Their combs filled with static, then silence. They were suddenly trapped in dark, silent metal shells, stuck to the side of the human ship. Before they could even process this, the second phase activated. The Odyssey's outer airlock doors, half melted, did not open inward. Instead, the ship selectively depressurized the small airlock chambers themselves. It wasn't an explosion. It was a quick, controlled venting of atmosphere into space. The force was just enough. The disabled boarding pods, their magnetic seals the only thing holding them, were shoved loose by the brief gust of escaping air. Like seeds spat from a fruit, the dozen pods tumbled away from the Odyssey, spinning slowly and helplessly into the void. Inside, the Marines were alive, their suits' basic life support still functioning. But they were adrift, weapons dead, unable to call for help or move. On the bridge of the light of Vorin, the tactical officer stared at his screen in horror. "Commander, boarding pods. All pods have been detached. Their signals are dead. They are drifting." "What happened? Did they use explosives? Plasma?" Cale barked. "No energy signature. No weapon fire. Our pods were disabled and then pushed off. The human ship vented atmosphere from the entry points. That is all." Cale felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. They hadn't fought the boarders. They hadn't killed them. They had short-circuited their gear and gently blown them away, like brushing dust off a shoulder. It was a dismissal. A casual, effortless dismissal of a military boarding action. Recovery teams. Now, get our Marines back. He roared. Across the Imperial fleet, small utility vessels scrambled, darting out to collect the spinning, helpless pods. It was a scene of utter humiliation, played out in full view of the entire fleet. On the Odyssey, the atmosphere returned to normal. The holes in the outer airlock doors were already being sealed by internal emergency shutters. Boarders have been repelled, Una reported, as if commenting on a minor system test. Minimal hull damage. Airlocks 1 and 2 are sealed. Airlock 4 needs a new outer door, but the inner seal is holding. "Good," Tay said. He opened the ship-wide intercom. "All crew, this is the captain. We've had an attempted unscheduled entry by the local authorities. The situation is handled. No injuries on our side. Please continue with your duties. Min, how's that drive looking?" Min's voice came back, cheerful. "Almost there, Captain." That little shake from the tractor beam actually helped settle a misaligned component. Go figure. Maybe 10 minutes now. Excellent. Carry on. Tay leaned back, glancing at the viewer, which showed the chaotic, scrambling recovery operation of the Imperial Marines. He shook his head slightly. They're very enthusiastic, aren't they? He said to Yuna. Seems to be their way, she replied, already focused back on her sensor logs of the Imperial engine signatures. Very direct. In the heart of the Imperial fleet, Commander Kale watched the recovery efforts, his earlier resolve replaced by a hollow, dawning awe. The humans hadn't gone to battle stations. They hadn't cheered a victory. They had simply continued their repair work. They had treated a military assault as a minor interruption, a glitch in their day. The message was finally terrifyingly clear. To the humans, the Galactic Empire wasn't a threat. It was an inconvenience, and they were almost done dealing with it. The recovery operation was a quiet, shameful affair. The drifting boarding pods were collected one by one, hauled back into the bays of the Imperial cruisers like sick fish caught in a net. Inside the light of Voron's command center, the silence was thicker than the radiation shielding. Commander Kale watched the last pod being secured, his sensory stalks drooping slightly. The video from the Marines' disabled suit cameras had been recovered. It showed only darkness, the suit systems dead, followed by a sudden, soundless tumbling into the starry void. There was no battle, no heroics. Just a swift, silent end to the mission. Diplomat Rena stood beside him, her usual composure replaced by a deep, thoughtful stillness. They did not kill, she said, her voice soft. They did not even capture. They removed the problem. As one removes an insect from a console. It was not an act of war. It was an act of maintenance. On the human ship, the mood was one of focused progress. Engineer Min's voice finally came over the bridge speakers, clear and satisfied. Captain, the drive is realigned, recalculated, and ready. All systems are green. We can go home whenever you're ready. Just give me the word. At his station, Captain Tay nodded. He looked at the main viewer, still showing the imposing Imperial fleet, now holding a more cautious, respectful distance. Thank you, Min. Well done. Yuna, plot the jump for our original survey corridor. Use the new calibrations. Let's not take any more wrong turns. Coordinates are set, Yuna confirmed, her fingers moving swiftly. The jump will take us clear of this crowded area. Good. Tay took a breath. Open a channel to the lead ship, the big one. Let's say goodbye. It's only polite. On the Imperial flagship, the alert chimed. Incoming communication from the human vessel. Kale and Rena exchanged a glance. Was this it? A declaration? A demand? An ultimatum born from their demonstrated power? Kale straightened his uniform. Put it through. Visual. The screen remained focused on the exterior view of the Odyssey. Only audio came through. Captain Tay's voice, calm and pleasant as it had been from the very beginning, filled the chamber. Commander Kale, voice Rena, this is Captain Tay of the Odyssey. Our navigational issue is resolved. We'll be departing your space now. Thank you for your patience. Have a nice day. The message ended. There was no more. No boast, no threat, no request for permission. Just a notification and a polite, commonplace farewell. Before Kale could even form a response, before he could order a countermand or a final, desperate weapons lock, the human ship acted. On the view screen, the dull gray vessel did not glow with massive energy. It did not spin up a visible warp nacelle or open a fiery rift. There was a slight, subtle shimmer around its hull, as if it were a mirage. Then, in the space between one heartbeat and the next, it was simply gone. Not a flash, not a streak of light. It vanished as completely and silently as a stone dropping into a still, deep pond. One moment, it was a solid object occupying space. The next, there was only empty space where it had been. The sensors screamed a moment later. Massive quantum field collapse at the departure point. No residual radiation. No warp signature. No particle trail. It's as if they were never here. The tactical officer cried out, his voice cracking. Kale stared at the empty spot on the screen. No signature. The humans had a faster-than-light drive that left no trail, no way to track them, no way to follow. They could go anywhere, appear anywhere, and leave without a trace. The implications were staggering. Rena broke the silence, her voice a whisper in the vast, stunned quiet of the bridge. They said, "Have a nice day." She turned to Kale, her large eyes wide. That is a social pleasantry. For them, this was a social interaction. An awkward, unintended one. Not a first contact. Not a military standoff. A misunderstanding. Kale slowly sank onto his command pedestal. The fear was gone, replaced by a vast, hollow feeling. They had thrown everything at the humans. Intimidation, protocol, military force. The humans had responded with technical explanations, a panda video, and a casual brushing aside of a boarding action. Then they had fixed their machine and left. The Empire, in all its majesty and might, had been a background character in the human crew's busy workday. Find that Earth, he ordered, but the command lacked force. Search every anomaly, every whisper from the unnapped voids. We must understand what they are. But he knew, in a cold part of his mind, that they might never find it. And if they did, what then? How do you threaten a storm? How do you negotiate with a mountain? In the mess hall of the Odyssey, the crew was gathered. The ship hummed smoothly, back on its correct course. Jay was serving up a rehydrated stew that smelled surprisingly good. Min was celebrating with a cup of the strong coffee. So, those chatty aliens, Jay said, stirring his stew. What was that all about? Some kind of festival? Looked like a military exercise to me, Min said between sips. Very fancy ships. Bad approach tactics, though. Sending boarding pods before even disabling the engines? Amateur. Yuna nodded, tapping her tablet. Their technology was fascinating, though. The way they modulated their shield harmonics suggests a mastery of layered energy fields we haven't considered. I've written up a preliminary report. Captain Tay sat with them, eating slowly. It was an unexpected detour, he said. But we got some unique sensor data. Let's just keep the, social interaction part out of the main mission log. File it under anomalous local phenomena. Headquarters doesn't need a 50-page report on us watching an alien parade and getting our hull scratched. The others chuckled. It was a minor oddity, already fading into the background of a long mission. The universe was big and strange, and today they had seen a particularly orderly and loud corner of it. Do you think they'll be okay? Laya, the astrophysicist, asked quietly. They seemed very agitated. I'm sure they're fine, Tay said, finishing his meal. They have each other, and all those shiny ships. They'll find someone else to talk to. He stood up, taking his tray to the cleaner. Their shift was almost over. Soon they would sleep and then continue their quiet survey of a distant nebula, their only mission to observe and to learn. The event near the Vergay sector would become a story, a curious anecdote to share maybe once or twice back on Earth. Meanwhile, light years away, the 3rd Imperial Patrol Fleet remained on high alert for 3 standard cycles before receiving orders to stand down. Commander Kale filed a report filled with cautious, bewildered language about an extra-imperial entity of unknown capability and psychology. It was debated in closed councils for months. causing anxiety and fueling paranoid new budget requests for deeper border patrols. The humans, of course, never gave it another thought. They had fixed the problem and moved on. The galaxy, for them, was simply a place to explore. They had not reacted to the Empire because, in the grand, quiet scope of their journey, there had been nothing substantive to react to. It was this, more than any invisible drive or call under pressure, that would haunt the Empire for generations to come, the crushing, absolute weight of a polite, uninterested shrug.